today. Before I get started, I'll go over our protocols real quickly for those that are following along at home. All of our media partners in the room were temperature tested on their way in. Everyone's wearing a mask and socially distancing in the room. I am now going to take my mask off so I'm less muffled for the microphone and so that those who read lips are better able to follow. All right, thank you all very much. As we usually do, I will go through a few announcements and then we'll take some questions. We're going to start with an update on the COVID situation. As of yesterday, there have been at least 26,540 cases in Orleans and 679 deaths reported. We're averaging around 130 new cases a day, and the positivity rate is at 4%. We need everybody to be clear on this. We remain in a very unsafe situation. The pandemic is still with us, and it is costing lives. That is why the mayor made the decision that bars in New Orleans are closed to indoor service and will remain closed. That is why there are no parades this year, and that is why large gatherings are not permitted. They are not safe, and they put lives in danger. None of this is normal, and none of this is business as usual. We've said all along that Mardi Gras is not canceled, but it is different. It is very different, and we need people, as we are right now, 2 weeks out, to be mindful of that. Our residents, visitors, anybody that's looking at this from home, trying to make their decisions about how they're going to celebrate Carnival. Mardi Gras in New Orleans this year is different than it has ever been because of the conditions that we find ourselves in. And those conditions are such that it is unsafe for any large gathering. There are new variants out there that we're all aware of. These variants make the disease more contagious. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's important to bear that in mind when you talk about large crowd gatherings. More contagious disease means more people in the hospital, potentially more people on ventilators, potentially more people dying. Large crowds, large gatherings become super spreader events, and they can increase that risk. So the takeaway here is that we remain in an unsafe environment, and that large gatherings are not safe in this environment, and that they will not be permitted for Mardi Gras Day or for the days leading up to it. Along those lines, Chief Ferguson and the public safety team right now are actively working on what their operations plan is going to look like, both for Fat Tuesday itself and for the days leading up to it. We'll be rolling out additional details as we get closer to the event, but we should be mindful that much along the lines of what we did with New Year's Eve, there are a number of options that are potentially in play. For Chief Ferguson, all options are on the table, which is to say I don't have specifics to give you today, and if we get those in follow-ups, we can talk about it, but those plans are still being worked out as the short version. But the takeaway there is that the public safety team is going to be standing up to respond to this as a public safety event, and that means that they are going to be paying particular attention to those large gatherings which could create super spreader events and further unsafe conditions. We had a statement on this on Sunday, but I'll reiterate for those that didn't get it or that need to hear it again. The mass gatherings like we saw in the video from Bourbon Street last weekend, those are potential super spreader events. They are unsafe. It's dangerous, it risks lives, and it risks the progress that we've made. Large gatherings spread COVID. COVID kills people. It's killed almost 700 of our brothers and sisters so far. Something we're very mindful. We're in a situation in a time of year where normally this entire city is celebrating. It's different this year. It's different because those 700 people aren't with us. In order to remain safe, in order for us to come back next year in the way that we all know and love, we have to be mindful of the guidelines. We have to be conscious of that throughout this season. So real quickly, I'll move into a few announcements and then we'll take the questions. Testing, we do want to make sure that people are continuing to get tested. As we've moved into the modified phase 2 and some restrictions have been eased, testing remains a very significant factor in determining the progress that we're making as we navigate through the pandemic. It's not a time to relax. If you and your family or friends have come into close contact with someone who has tested positive, please get tested. If you attended a gathering or another unsafe activity, please get tested. COVID testing for this week, I'll run through the sites. These are all available online and will be posted to our social media as well. There's a drive-through testing at Mahalia Jackson, UNO, and the Hilario Center today through Friday from 8 till 4, Saturday from 8 till 2. There's walk-up at the Viet Community Center. That's today from 1 until. So check the site for the rest of that. Walk-up at the Central City Christian Fellowship today through Thursday from 8 a.m. till 1:30 p.m. Walk-up at the St. Paul Lutheran Church today through tomorrow from 12 to 6. Walk-up at the Lakeview Christian Church Thursday from 9 till 1. Walk-up at the Mexican Consulate on Friday from 9 till 3. And walk-up at the Hispanic Apostolate Saturday from 9 till 3. Move quickly into a couple of announcements, and then we'll move to the questions. Public hearing for the Gentilly Residence District, the GRD Action Plan. The city is seeking input for the reallocation and use of the $141 million in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the HUD National Disaster Resilience Competition grant funding for the Gentilly Residence District. In order to ensure that the public has an opportunity to learn about the changes and provide comment, a second virtual public hearing will be held. That's this Thursday, February 4th at 6 p.m. The comment period has now been extended until 5 p.m. on, well, that's not odd. Anyway, the public hearing will be Thursday at 6. Dial-in and web information will be going out via release later today. This morning, the mayor was joined by NOLA Public Schools to remind our family and community that on the importance of school attendance. She will also be attending a groundbreaking this Thursday at 10:30 for Phase 2 of the Low Barrier Shelter. That's going to be at 1530 Gravier Street. And with that, we'll just move to questions.
Well, does the city basically have the welcome mat out for people to come down to Bourbon Street, or are you advising?
No, as you just heard me say, large gatherings are not safe in the current environment, right? We are certainly aware that Mardi Gras Day, we've said from the very beginning, you can't cancel Mardi Gras. It's a religious holiday. It's a day that's on the calendar. But what we can do and what we have done consistently is take action around what we know to be unsafe. That means we've shut down bars to indoor service and they're going to remain closed. That means that large gatherings are not permitted. And that means that there's not going to be parades this year. So the message really, if you're at home and you're looking at coming here, don't come here expecting it to be the way that it always has been. And that very much includes large gatherings on Bourbon, which are unsafe, and that's not something that we want to see happen.
Do you know?
Bo, with regards to that event over the weekend,
Yeah.
there were a few. It was not only Bourbon, there was a house unveiling and a float house with a big crowd out there and all.
Right.
Back to the Bourbon one, there were also mounted police out there. What is their role in hoping to reduce what folks are doing on the street?
I'm sorry, what is the role of the police officers in?
The mounted police
Right.
are on Bourbon Street.
Sure.
We did a story on this yesterday.
Mhm.
Earth cam images from that night, the mounted police are out there.
Right.
These guys are on one end of Bourbon, I guess they're gathering on other ends or whatever.
Right.
Does the mounted police have a role in hoping to reduce?
I think public safety up and down the line has a role in helping to reduce that, absolutely. And we'll look at what happened last week and find places that we can do better. As I said, Chief Ferguson and the public safety team are actively working on that right now, not just a review of what happened this weekend, but looking ahead to what we're anticipating for Fat Tuesday and the days leading up to that, which is to say certainly law enforcement has a role to play, but we don't get safer by arresting people. We get safer by getting vaccines in arms, and we get safer by people obeying the guidelines and leaning in, as we've said all along. And I think largely our residents and our businesses have been working very hard to comply with these guidelines and making those sacrifices. As we have visitors that are arriving, we are asking that they do the same thing and respect the progress that has been made.
Your statement says that it can't all be punitive.
Correct.
In other words, we can't punch
That's exactly what I'm saying, is that, again, we don't become safer by arresting or fining people. We get safer by people complying with the guidelines. We get safe. Go ahead. That's fine.
No, my last question on that, is there a chance that the quarter gets shut down for the Mardi Gras?
I will say at this point, all options are on the table. That decision has not been made, but that's certainly something that's been discussed.
Yeah.
So, you said you can't rush your way out of this, but at this point, there's been very little effort to do anything to break up these crowds. And I guess my question is, why hasn't police done anything on this weekend
Yeah.
or any of the previous ones? And why are they just now coming up with a plan for what to do for
Well,
the next 2 weeks?
to be clear, it's not that they're just now doing it, it's that that is still in process, right? Like, obviously, we knew, well, hold on, Jeff. We knew when Mardi Gras was coming, right? So and that's something that we are working on. That is that to say, I'm not able to give you operational details of what Fat Tuesday is going to look like today, because Chief Ferguson is still working that out. But I don't really appreciate the implication that they just started thinking about it, right? That's something we have been working on for a while. That said, to your question, the large gatherings that we've seen, we need to look harder at what those responses have been, right? All throughout this process, you've heard me say, and you've heard the mayor say many times, that the way we get compliance, the way that we prefer to get it, is by talking to people, is by inviting people to have a stake in this and to get it, right? It's not a matter of just trying to find people and arrest people and just deal with it in that punitive way. at its core, this is a problem that all of us have a stake in, that everyone has to participate in, and that, immediate law enforcement response isn't always the only or the best solution. That said, certainly we're looking at ways we can do better, and that enforcement can work in a stronger way.
DSU?
So early in the pandemic, there was a few instances where there would be police cars going down Bourbon Street or in the quarter.
Sure.
Telling everybody to go home.
Yep.
Why didn't that happen this weekend, and is that, could that be happening?
It certainly potentially could. That's one of several options that are on the table. When I say everything's on the table, that's one of them. Speaking to Chief Ferguson about that specific tactic, for lack of a better term, having the cars roll through, that's something that he's looking at, and that may be something you see come back, because we did see compliance in certain instances with that. So again, looking at what happened last weekend, looking ahead to anticipating crowd events in the next 2 weeks, that's something that's on the table.
And I think you addressed it for the next 2 weeks, but we're not just talking about Fat Tuesday.
Correct. No, we're talking about this weekend, next weekend, throughout what normally would be the carnival season, right?
And has it come up yet whether like a manpower or resources issue had anything to do with what happened last weekend? Anything you can tell us about that?
No, meaning that has not been, to my understanding, a part of the issue around last weekend, right? To my understanding, there's not a manpower issue around what happened. It was a response that we need to get tighter and that we will get tighter. But to my knowledge, that has not been a conversation around manpower or resources.
Foxway.
Have any restrictions on bars in the French Quarter been contemplated?
Well, right now, bars are shut down to indoor service, right? Like right now, and this is something that I think it's important for people that are watching at home to be very aware of, people that may be considering coming. Again, it's not normal this year. It doesn't look like it normally does. Right now, bars are closed to indoor service. Right now, there are no parades, right? It's a different year. It's a different kind of Mardi Gras. So will there be additional restrictions on bars? Right now, the operating understanding is that the restrictions that the mayor and Dr. Vegno laid out last week will be in place for 3 weeks. That includes bars being shut to indoor service, regardless of where we are with that positivity rate.
But they can still get a takeout drink in a bar that serves food and take it out on Bourbon Street,
Correct.
which lots of folks
Right.
did last week.
Which creates the large gathering problem, right? Which is something that we're looking to address.
Vaccines, Bo.
Vaccines, yeah.
Yes, we know that we're supposed to get some this weekend.
Yes.
Is there a plan for a mass vaccine site in the city? I know that resources is the deal right now. It's going to kind of dictate what
Right.
we do. But is there a plan for any of our?
Yes, I can say that Dr. Vegno and the health department are working to be, so really, to your point, the issue is supply. The issue is not operations. When we have that supply, when we have the quantities that we would need to stand up a site that would serve the general community as a walk-up or as a drive-through, we're ready to go on that. Those plans are sitting on go, but until we have the vaccines in hand, we're not there. There has been progress made, and I think probably your viewers are aware of this. Initially, there was a problem where at the state level, they were only getting a heads up maybe a week in advance of how many they were going to have. Now that's been brought into 3 weeks, and we hope to continue to see progress in that direction so that, again, once we have that supply, we're going to be ready to roll.
Gambit.
Is the city aware of this anti-lockdown protest that's supposed to happen in front of the cathedral on that Tuesday, where they're calling COVID a hoax and
I can say that I personally was not aware of it. I don't know that law enforcement is or isn't, but it's certainly something that, now that you've said it, if it wasn't on their radar, it will be now.
DSU.
when it comes to the crowds on Bourbon Street, a lot of those people are like visitors.
Right.
Is there any way that we don't know about that the city is looking at communicating that message that Mardi Gras is different? and
This is it.
dangerous to-
This is us communicating that message right now. No, I'm not being smart with you. Really, what we're trying to get out there for any visitors that are looking to come is me saying it now. You're going to hear the mayor say it. You're going to hear health officials saying it. You're going to hear our public safety team saying it. It is different this year, right? So for those that are watching at home, for contemplating a trip to New Orleans, it's not the same this year. Bars are closed to indoor service. Large gatherings are not permitted. There are no parades.
And I'm sure residents are hearing that, but
Yes.
people who are flying in the weekend and flying out and not, unfortunately consuming local media.
Sure.
Is there, to the airports or hotels or, I don't know.
No, those are very strong ideas, and that may be something we need to look into. But at the point that they're at the airport, they're already here, right? So again, we have to do both things. We have to message to people what the guidelines are, and we have to make sure that we're enforcing them, and that's where we're looking at trying to make improvements.
All right, last question, the applicant.
So the mayor and various other people have encouraged people to continue to come for Mardi Gras as long as they act like a New Orleanian. And I guess I'm curious what the administration expected folks to do when they came here for Carnival if it wasn't what we saw over the weekend.
Well, first I'd take issue with the idea that the mayor is encouraging people to come, right? The question the clip that keeps getting dragged out is people asked her, you know, are we still welcoming people? We're a welcoming city. We're always going to be a welcoming city. And we do know that people are coming, right? That's a given, that there are people that are going to be coming. So all we can do is make sure that they're aware of what the rules are and how it's different. So in terms of what the expectations are, I think the mayor's been pretty clear on that. Her expectation is that if people are coming here, that they abide by the same guidelines that are in place for our locals. Okay? All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your patience.